I did pay off the debt, but then going forward to being married, I really wasn't probably a very good investment, other than for my inspiration or other ideas. But work-wise, I don't know. At the next square, so the first square was working with Beardsley. Second, the opposition was working at a college to pay off a debt, made enough money to move, and then get to Toronto, get married, commitments. Then the next one, I started a bookstore, and I moved to the beaches. In the process, I had the bookstore, and I moved my residence from the West End over to the beaches. So that was again, I think, about hardworking discipline. When I came back to conjuncts, I was teaching classes in several cities, traveling. My Mars is in the third house in Scorpio, and I was writing, and I was doing all kinds of classes, radio shows. Around, very active at that conjunction. It was like a very powerful but busy time. I even had an office in London. I was going back and forth between Toronto and London, driving back and forth and maintaining the things I wanted to do. When I hit the square, I started the Star Center. It was a big center. I got elected. I started the NCR chapter in Toronto. I elected to AFAN, and I did the first performance of the Celestial Harp. So all of these things required commitment, preparation, planning, timing. But I made the commitment to do them, and they all pulled off. They all worked together. I was working very hard. So I was working hard when I was at the beer store. I was working really hard there. Just different levels because it was a second cycle. This was working hard around astrology. That was working hard just getting out of the house and having some resources of my own. At the opposition, when I left Montreal and I paid off a debt here, it was the end. I worked for Sympathico. It was the end of that contract, and I had to make a lot of adjustments to make my own website. And I started a meditation group and chatting. So even though it was a meditation group, I still had to do the work to start it, and it was a very disciplined, hardworking time. But it came on the heels of losing a very valuable contract for a couple of years and it ending, and then there really was a critical point. I had to do something to get. I already was up at a high expense level, and I had to really work hard to get my bearings again. But the next square was my grandson was born. My second grandson was born. And this was a big issue because I got more involved and more committed in being involved in his life. And then at the conjunction again, first conjunction was the Cub Scouts. Second conjunction was radio and TV shows and writing and doing tours. With that, the next one, I got back together with a guy I did some computer work with years ago to build an astrology computer program, which we did in the 80s, in the 90s, and we let it go, and we're going to try and upgrade it. We tried to do this in 2013, but he was getting too old and he couldn't manage his end of it. So I had to work on it and try and work a bit more on it my own and put it on the side for a while. So that was, that was a big new beginning. So this is just, you're all going to have all of these factors. You just have to slow it down and work. And you see the basic factor. You see a simple association, then you start reflecting on it. And every now and then, how does the Cubs relate to when I was doing the radio shows and classes? Then I was taking classes and I was learning different things here. I was doing more and teaching more. And then the last one was working with computers and getting a start on my own work, on my own computer work with astrology. I have by nature Saturn square my Mars and Pluto in there, so I have very extreme tendencies. So I'm always working hard and a little bit, but when I work hard, it's hardest at the people close to me. And I drive people too hard and I run into problems around it. But watching the Saturn to the Mars, okay, good. You're going to see time demands, restraints on your energy, physical demands on your time. And it's forcing you to be more disciplined around your energy, to be more responsible with what you're doing, to have more authority. But often you're having to put up with authority and do more to keep up with authority to maintain the job that you have. Um, yeah, so always the conjunction is the defining, the Saturn's conjuncting Mars, you're defining your actions. It's the beginning of the cycle. When it's opposed, it's the awareness, it's the opposition. Your Mars is trying to do things, you're far away from how much you can accomplish. There's a limit to how much you can do, and you're having to realize you're at that limit and not push further, having to wait a little bit and slow down a little bit and adjust your commitments and what you can handle. But if you're doing something with someone, they're going to feel you're going to be more serious and working harder with Saturn at these points, less fun to be with when the Saturn's on your Mars. But it's like I said, it's not as it's pressure. It's kind of a normal type of pressure. You have to work harder, have to make more of an effort. It's not as emotionally disorienting as Venus or Mercury or the Moon or the Sun would be. It's just problems you run into that you have to work at to fix. Time demands extra efforts, extra pressure. Okay. So we'll get out of here. Now, Saturn and Jupiter. This is really, when you get Saturn to Jupiter, when they work well together, it's Jupiter is understanding the demands of Saturn, the time demands of Saturn. When Jupiter understands the demands of Saturn, it becomes wise. It understands responsibilities, and then it can guide Mars better. So Mars is trying to do things. It's running to limits with Saturn. Jupiter's trying to teach it why. At the same time, Jupiter's encouraged, go more, go more. It's trying to get Mars to do more and more and more. And Saturn's saying, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. And if Jupiter can stop encouraging too much aggression, it can divide a really nice finesse of being prepared. Like when Jupiter and Saturn conjunct, square, or opposed, they're not bad aspects. They're waking up and learning aspects where that learning comes in, understanding responsibilities, understanding parents, understanding commitments. And when they come in, it really, it doesn't show us a specific thing. It's sort of there. You work on it after you pass. Oh yeah, it was that, and then but it changes it makes your guidance system of Jupiter more responsible, a little more mature, a little safer, rather than not quite so reckless. So Saturn will tone down Jupiter a little bit, will moderate Jupiter, and Jupiter will have to moderate its advice to Mars. Mars, meanwhile, doesn't want to take the advice, and if it's already got aggression problems, it's going to be fighting it, and Jupiter's trying to say, no, you can't, you got to slow down, and Saturn comes in saying, slow down. So Jupiter is a hard one to work with because it represents your comprehension and your value and your morals, your ethics. Is it right or wrong? I'm doing this. Is it right or wrong? Are you hurting people? Or are you doing it? Are you being hurt? Or like, what's right? What's wrong? What's too much? What's too little? This is Jupiter. But when it's aligned to Saturn, when Saturn comes up and touches Saturn, it's like you're growing up and you're learning some lessons. And let's see. Okay, Jupiter can come so many different ways. Like when Saturn conjuncted my Jupiter, that was grade 1. And that was when I was in the grade 11 teacher. So I had a teacher from Russia, foreign, that's a Jupiterian thing, a teacher from another place teaching gym. And Saturn came in and touched it. And I worked with him really well for a couple of years, but I was with the older team. And then he didn't stay with us. So it was a great loss after I'd lost him. But in the meantime, it really integrated, allowed me to work with these grade 11 students and do things with them. It got a certain amount of respect. My parents weren't into it, so I was really being very supportive around it, but they didn't interfere with it. And for a couple of years, that was really first good teachers. When I got with the Saturn on it, it was formative. It taught me how to work to get things, to accomplish things, how to get more in shape. I was always very small, so there were always bigger guys and bullies, and I had to work to be good and disciplined. And this teacher just was right on. What's his name? Mr. Samagawari. But then at the square to Jupiter, my dad was in the hospital. He was having his lung out, and I was with a crowd of bad friends, and we're all in high school and rebelling and just getting out, and I was ready to quit school and study. But the last hit of this, I went and had a talk with my dad. And I told him, look, I'll go back to school. Just get off my case. I'll go back to school. I'll get a job after school, make my own money. I won't ask an allowance or anything. Just don't tell me what to do. Don't get on my case about my homework. Get off my case about my homework. I'll go back to school. He agreed. I went back and my marks went from failure marks to scholarship marks from that moment on. So it was a really interesting confrontation of Saturn to get a correct understanding so that I could use my energy properly without being told what to do and being severely punished in stupid ways, in my opinion. When Saturn opposed my Jupiter, by this time I'm 22, 23, 24. I'd left North America. I didn't finish university. I left. I traveled a few years. I ended up in India. I spent 2 years in a cave in India meditating. And then at the end of that, that's during the first two hits of Saturn opposed Jupiter. What's real, what's not, this was a mystical process. Then by the time I came back to North America, and I was working in a print shop, and I got my own place and paid back a debt. So this was the Saturn working on the Jupiter. A lot was learned in those times. And it really was an adjustment of my outlook on life, which adjusted my energy. Of course, I have Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury all in Scorpio in the third house, so they kind of all work together. Then, so at the same time, when I went to the AFA convention and the astrology convention, AFA, and traveled, the guy I was supposed to go with had almost died in a car accident the week before, and my father came in and went on the trip with me. He drove me from Toronto down to Las Vegas, over to California, up to Vancouver. It was the last real trip we ever took together. But it kind of created a kind of bond we never had before because I was more an adult at that point. When Saturn came back to Jupiter, I'd been running a library and I gave it away for 5 years to a spiritual group that was going to start a university. They failed, it didn't work, and the library was damaged, and went and saw it, and I had this option to take it back after 5 years. I went back and looked at it. It was so horrible. I was so mad, I took the library back. It's an instant decision, Jupiter, Saturn. This was misrun. I have to take it back. I took it back, but the taking it back really made an inconvenience on my lifestyle enough that it really broke the back of my marriage. Having the library back in the place and it became like my house became a working place, and it damaged the marriage. Anyways, that was Saturn to Jupiter. That was the second conjunction. The square, there was misunderstandings. Wife had a bike accident, hurt my back, split up with the wife. So this was all Saturn, Jupiter.